Hello and welcome to the analysis of the Hindu newspaper dated December 6, 2022. In this video, we are going to talk about two important newspaper articles. Now, these articles are going to be very important, very significant for the civil services examination. But this doesn't discard the fact that other articles which were present in the Hindu newspaper weren't important. So, we have prepared a list of all the important newspaper articles which are present in the Hindu newspaper. You can go through all of these newspaper articles, but they do not require that kind of understanding, or we have discussed them in the previous videos. So we are not going to discuss all of these articles. We are going to just discuss two important newspaper articles. If this is very clear to you, let's move ahead to the first important newspaper article. But before that, do consider subscribing to this channel because we put a lot of awesome videos. We explain the Hindu newspaper on a daily basis. And do also join us on Telegram to get all the important PDFs important for the civil services examination. So with this, let's now head to the first important newspaper article. Now this particular newspaper article is regarding the labor crisis or the crisis of labor post-pandemic, right? So this particular article talks about two reports which have been presented by the International Labour Organization, and these reports are basically Global Wage Report 2022 to 2023, which is going to analyze the impact of inflation and COVID-19 on wages and purchasing power. And the second report we have over here is Asia Pacific Employment and Social Outlook 2022, which is going to talk about rethinking sectoral strategies for a human-centered future of work. So now the first report which we will talk about is the wage report, right? And this particular report discusses the impact of inflation. It talks about the economic slowdown on real monthly wage around the world, and it also blames the war in Ukraine and the energy crisis for the situation which we are at right now. Now, the Asia Pacific Employment and Social Outlook 2022 reports talks about the Asia Pacific region and how 22 million jobs are lost in 2022. All right. So let's analyze these reports one by one. First, we will talk about the global wage report, what is written in this particular report. So the ILO reports on wages looks at the real and nominal wages of the employees. Now, what are the nominal wages? Nominal wages are the wages which have been adjusted after accounting for the consumer price inflation. And when you do not account for, or when you do not adjust the CPI, that is the consumer price inflation, then it is going to be named as real wage growth, right? Or it is going to be named as real wage. And the real wage growth refers to the year-on-year change in the real average monthly wages of all the employees. All right. So now, what is wage? We know what is nominal wage. We know what is the real wage. Let's talk about what is written in this particular report about the wage term. All right. It has explained the term wage. Now, wage is particularly the total gross remuneration, including regular bonuses received by the employees during a specified period for time worked as well as for time not worked, such as paid annual leave and paid sick leave. All the gross remuneration, all the money you are receiving, and this also includes what are the regular bonuses received by the employees. All the bonuses will be included in it, and all the kinds of benefits such as the annual paid leave and the sick leave will be included in it. All of this contributes to your wage plus all of these things. For example, what we have talked about, we have talked about the paid annual leave, we have talked about the paid sick leave, we have also talked about the regular bonuses that you receive. All of these are going to account as the wages, right? So now we have talked about the wages and what is the definition that has been mentioned in this report. Let's talk about the data given in this particular report. But before that, what is the objective of this particular report? So the objective is basically to collect wage data from as many countries and territories, about 190, which are then grouped into 5 separate regions. And if we talk about our region, that is the Asia Pacific region, then Or if we talk about the Indian subcontinent, then we talk about India, China, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, right? So in 2006, there was an increase of 9.3% in the real wage growth, right? There was a real wage growth of 9.3%, but at that particular point of time, the wages were really very low, that is 4,398 per month. But in 2021, we have seen that there was a decrease in the real wage growth. It was seen as minus 0.2%. There was a decrease in the wage in the 2021, and but the overall wage is more higher than the 2006 period. Now it is standing at 17,017 per month. But we need to take into account that pandemic has hit, and due to that, impact has shown in the real wage growth as well. Now this particular data is not presented by the ILO. It has been presented by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. ILO has just taken the data from the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, right? So we cannot blame the international authorities for it. The data is as it is, right? It's minus 0.2%. The real wage growth is minus 0.2%. But at the same time, if we talk about China, then in 2019 it was shown to be, or real wage growth was shown to be 5.6%, but it has now declined to 2% in 2021, which is higher than India, but at the same time it has also slowed down, right? And in Pakistan, the situation is very worse. In 2021, we have seen the minus 3.8%, right? And in Sri Lanka, which is going through an economic turmoil, no data was available from there, right? So this is the data regarding the real wage growth. We have talked about this particular report, which talks about the definition of the wage. It talks about the nominal wage. It talks about the real wage. If this is very clear to you, let's move ahead to the next report. But before that, who are the most affected according to this particular report? So the most affected are going to be the low income earners and their households, as they have and their households are going to suffer because they will spend most of their disposable income on essential goods and services, which are generally experience greater price increases than non-essential items. The essential items do get the most kind of inflation, and non-essential items do not get that kind of inflation because the demand for the essential items increases. It is going to increase over the time, and that is why the low income earners are going to be the most affected according to this particular report. Now that we have talked about this particular report, let's talk about the next report, which is the Asia Pacific Employment and Social Outlook 2022, right? So now at the Asia Pacific level, only the jobs in high skill occupations saw recovery from COVID-19 crisis, which is true across all sub regions. And it shows that the ILO is concerned about increased inequality, because if the recovery is only shown in the high skill occupation, what is going to happen? The resources are going to get into the hands of high skill laborers, and all the workers who are less skilled are going to get less money because they are not going to recover fast. While there is an employment gain of 1.6% among high skilled workers between 2019 and 2021, there is no such substantial gain among low to medium skilled workers. So the low to medium skilled workers are going to be the most affected at this particular point of time, because there is a stagnation in the gain in the income, right? And among the G20 countries, the report noted a significant increase in the wage level of real wages between advanced G20 countries and emerging G20 countries such as India. And it is on the level of about $4,000 per month in advanced economies and about $1,800 per month in emerging economies. So what we are concerned about here is that rich are getting richer and poor are getting poorer, right? So what are the remedies that have been suggested in this particular report, in both of these particular reports? So the first thing is that we need to respond to the cost of living crisis. Now we need to form our policies in such a way that the bargaining process for future nominal wage adjustment should embrace a sufficiently large but prudent price expectation. We need to expect that the prices are going to get high, and that is how we are going to adjust our nominal wage. All right, so this is the particular strategy which we can implement. Now if we implement this particular strategy, if we include these points into our policies, then this could contribute to safeguarding the standard of living of households against unexpected future inflation hikes, and it will also avoid an undesirable wage inflation spiral. We are going to talk about the wage inflation spiral after this particular remedies we have suggested. We have talked about the remedies, but we need to first understand what are the other remedies as well. So now there is a need to strengthen labor market institutions and the wage policies, because there are more certainties that are going to happen in the future. And apart from it, it wants governments to focus this particular report. These reports wants government to suggest to focus on gender pay gap, because as and when women leave the labor market, they are less likely to return than men. Now if the women are leaving the marketplace, it is less likely that they are going to come back in comparison to men, because they are going to come back, men are going to come back, but the women are going to leave the labor market and they are going to go off, and this will contribute to the gender inequality, right? So we need to make sure that a women are there in the labor market more in order to address the issue of gender inequality, right? So these are some of the remedies which have been suggested by the two reports which we have talked about. Now let's talk about what is known as wage inflation spiral, because we have seen that it is undesirable to have wage inflation spiral. So what is it? So wage inflation spiral is basically a situation in which wages increase to the higher prices. Mind it, wages are increasing, wage increases lead to higher prices, wages are increasing and the prices of the commodities are also increasing at the same time, which in turn leads to further wage increases to compensate the higher cost of living. Now in order to compensate for the higher prices, we need to increase the wages. Now this particular spiral goes on and on. Wage increase leads to higher prices lead to wage increases. So we need to control it, right? We do not need a very high increase in the wages. We want that the wages should be at a wages should increase, but they should increase at a certain level, so that higher prices, there are no higher prices, and the higher prices do not lead to further wage increases. Now this cycle can continue indefinitely, leading to an overall increase in the cost of living. So if there is a wage inflation spiral, then there is going to be an overall increase in the cost of living, and there is also going to be a decrease in the purchasing power of the money, because for the same commodity you earlier paid rupees 10, now you have to pay rupees 15. So there is no substantial increase in overall benefit to you. There is not going to be an increase in the happiness for you, because the cost of living is going to increase. So this is what is known as the wage inflation spiral. Now we have talked about wage inflation spiral. What can be the future ahead? Because there is a lot of problem. There is a problem in the living standard, there is a problem in the wages. So what are the focus areas we need to address, right? So there is an urgent need to address negative effects of the climate. There is also we need to address the increasing inequalities. We need to talk about the poverty, discrimination, violence and exclusion endured by the millions of people. We need to take into account the lack of vaccine and access to adequate sanitation and essential healthcare for all. We need to also address the divide between the poor and wealthier countries. We have talked about it in terms of how there is a difference in the G20 countries as well. All right. So this is it regarding this particular newspaper article. Let's now move ahead to the next important newspaper article. Now this particular newspaper article is significant because Sri Lanka is asking for Indian help to boost the dairy output. All right. So what is this article about? So in a bid to scale up its dairy production to To become self-sufficient, Sri Lanka has sought technical assistance from India's National Dairy Development Board and market leader Amul, reviving a collaboration that the island attempted in the late 1990s but failed to take forward. In the 1990s, Sri Lanka wanted to increase its milk production, but this collaboration with India's National Dairy Development Board and the Amul was not brought into fruition. Now that Sri Lanka is going through the economic crisis, it wants that its food crisis should be solved, its milk crisis should be solved. We are going to talk about the National Dairy Development Board, but first let's talk about the present situation in Sri Lanka. So the current situation is such that currently Sri Lanka's domestic dairy production meets less than half of its requirements, and the half of the requirements which it is not able to fulfill comes from New Zealand. So the dollar-stepped island nation spends about $300 million annually on dairy imports, and as the country's economy crashed earlier this year, leading to severe shortages, milk powder widely used in Sri Lanka, where the fresh milk is scarce, was unavailable to the most. And apart from it, with the living costs soaring through the year, milk products locally produced or imported remain out of reach for many poor families. Now there have also been now the families have also been forced to ration their dairy intake, and the adults have switched to tea without the milk, and the children are forced to drink lesser milk. Now this is the particular situation in Sri Lanka, and the UST milk cost nearly Lankan rupees, that is 500, which is roughly 111, while the 1 kg of milk powder rose to Lankan rupees of 1300 this year, which is about 290 rupees. Now this is a substantial money. Now if you compare the prices of this milk to India, then in India what is the cost of milk? Around 60 rupees per kilo, something like 60 rupees per liter, something like that. Now you can compare that money to the Sri Lankan money, right? Now this is very significant, which is why the National Dairy Development Board is going to now help it. It said seek the help. We hope that they are going to help. They are going to collaborate with the Sri Lankans so that their crisis situation of milk is solved. Now what is exactly is this NDDB, or National Dairy Development Board? So National Dairy Development Board was basically founded in 1965, and it was going to replace at that particular point of time exploitation with empowerment, tradition with modernity, stagnation with growth, and transforming dairying into instrument for development of India's rural people. It basically helped India in its milk revolution, right, or white revolution. So now it was initially registered as a society under the Societies Act 1860, but it saw collaboration with the Indian Dairy Corporation, and it was registered under the Companies Act 1956 by the NDDB Act of 1987. Now that it has become a statutory body, the new body corporate was declared an institution of national importance by this particular act. Alright, so now the dairy board, what is the function of this particular dairy board? What has happened after the formation of the NDDB? So the dairy board has planned and spearheaded India's dairy programs by placing dairy development in the hands of milk producers and the professionals to employ to manage their cooperatives. And it is no secret that India is the largest producer of the milk, most efficient producer of the milk, and its expertise in the milk is very large. All right, so this is it regarding this particular newspaper article, and this is it for the day. Thank you from my side. Do like and share the video and subscribe to this channel. Have a good day. Bye.